healing stories. You've been doing this for 20 years now.
20 years.
So there's so much experience in there.
Yes, there is. And I feel, I'm going to get a little teary-eyed to think about it. I feel that there's so much, I have developed what I call this body of experience, body of awareness over this work and how things sort of happen and don't happen. And I think that's sort of invaluable to have that. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely love it. As I'm going forward with this work, I think about my life. I'm going to turn 80 in another month. And I do know that without this work, I would not be here.
Wow.
Probably not even here, period. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's been so healing in my own body and my body and mind and all of that. Mm-hmm. So that's been truly astonishing when I think about it. And the other thing I have realized is I'm more aware of what's happening. I realize over time how much more what I am aware of when we live in this, I call it the quantum field. I was writing about that yesterday. Mm-hmm. And you realize that's really important to notice that, because it's about the law of attraction. What I'm thinking about, I'm attracting. And that's an important thing for everyone to be aware of, whether they're doing this work or not. But if we're thinking wellness and we're thinking prosperity and abundance and cooperation and coordination with everyone around us, life tends to be more like that.
I'm starting to see that too, just with synchronicities in like what I'm thinking about. And this is a completely random example, but I think it really speaks to how it's not random.
No.
My husband wants to do this construction process where he preserves the wood by burning it. It is an ancient Japanese technique, and I can't remember the name now. I had never heard of it, but you literally torch the wood as a way of sealing it and preserving it. And then yesterday on Instagram, the top reel was somebody scorching the wood for their rabbit cage. Like, how random is that? I had never heard of it before, and that's the first thing I saw yesterday.
Yeah, and when we begin to tune into that, I mean, those things have been happening, but we're not aware of it because we don't even connect them. So I have become aware of how often I'm attracting, or not anymore, I don't think, how often I was attracting things that were not very comfortable for me to experience, but I almost expected it. Or I was complaining about something like that, and all of a sudden, there it is. But until I really started to pick up on that, I didn't think about it. And the other thing I'm realizing when people do affirmations, you're saying affirmations as you want it to be. You know, I intend to have this amazing, abundant, healthy life. Yeah, here I am. If we said it with other ways of expressing it, it's not going to have the same outcome. So then I go back to my stories. And the thing about my stories or working with clients is to maintain the possibility that what they expected when they came to see me is not going to happen in a straight line. As an example, was someone who came and said he was having issues with his left ankle and his right rotator cuff. And he didn't tell me any more. And he had 2 sessions. I worked on those places, but I also always start at the head. And as you know, starting at the head is sort of allowing everything below the head to be impacted. And he said, I still have those pain, those issues. But he had been on the table for probably at least an hour. And he hadn't realized he had been there that long. He'd gone into this deep, relaxing place. And I said, is there anything else that you've experienced during these sessions? Well, yes, he said, I've become extremely relaxed. I know I'm no longer anxious. I feel great. I said, well, that's a pretty good outcome. And I thought because of the issues that were going on, that was where it needed to start. So what I'm learning, I'm still learning how to to talk to clients is to say, I don't know what will happen. And I found when I was able to say that with a lot of comfort and confidence, like that was a big thing for me to be able to say, I don't know what will happen. I only know that when the energy works in the body, it does what it needs to do. And it goes back usually to the beginning of where this thing started.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to go back to the origin, even if it was way back in an early childhood. And the other fascinating thing, it may be pre-birth. It may even be preconception. But wherever it is, it's healing, first of all, where it began. And it may go through that very quickly. But it's amazing when that happens because people start to feel better and better and better, and they have more energy. And a lot of the negative things going on with them are gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to say that it has positive side effects because, like you said, with your gentleman, he came in for the pain in his ankle and his shoulder, right? That's what got him through the door. And the beautiful side effect was his anxiety is gone and he's relaxed. Like, that's huge.
Yes. And that made all the difference, all the difference in the world to him. And he got that. But initially that was, this is why I came. I've had 2 sessions and it hasn't changed at all. And actually in the 3rd session, it did. It was quite different. Another story, I was thinking about it yesterday. A woman who came to see me, she was taking care of her husband he'd been a pilot in the Second World War, and he had been hospitalized. He had strokes. He was back home with her now, and he still had paralysis in his left arm. So she was taking care of him, but sometimes it was very difficult. And she had a lot of stress and a lot of headaches. So she came to me for her headaches and her upper body pain. And she was a smoker. So she said, don't talk to me about smoking because I'm not here to stop smoking. I said, no, that's not my business. If you smoke, that's up to you, So I worked with her. And each time I worked with her, the impact on her whole being was quite incredible. And as I would work, so I work where it hurts, it's bothering her first, and then I would work down her body until after 4 or 5 sessions, I was working on her feet. And as soon as I put my hands under her heels or on top of her feet, she just said, wow, she could feel the energy go up her body. She said, I had no idea. And what I've come to realize is that when people have had a lot of surgery, for instance, in their lower body, it's impacted the way the energy in their legs. And when I did that day, she just felt this of energy go up her legs and up her whole body. And when she was walking down the hall, I have this neat way of being able to see people walking down the hall when they're leaving, going to the front door. I walk behind them. I walk behind them coming in and going out. And she said, it feels like I have wings on my feet. As a result of this work, she started to take yoga. So she came back to see me one day. She said, Aileen, I can't stand on one foot. She said, I tried it. What is that posture where you stand on one foot and put your foot up again? The other foot. Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, how am I going to help her with this? So we have to use our creativity often. So I was suggesting, imagining she has roots on her feet, etc. So then I thought, I wonder if she imagined that her feet were big, that she had these big squares under her each foot. And it was amazing. As soon as she imagined that her feet had these big platforms under them, not just these little soles of her feet, it was fine. So it brings me face to face with how much we can change how we work with ourselves and with other people simply by finding ways that make it easier for them to be present to that. Another situation I remember working with, and I'm thinking now in terms of where something started. Mm-hmm. I remember I was working with this person's shoulder, and maybe both shoulders. This was the shoulder, I think, that they came in with. Mm-hmm. And I said, how does that feel? That's okay. But he said, now I have pain in my right hip. And I said, okay. So then I, put one hand here and the other hand on the right hip. And he said, now it hurts in the right ankle. So I said, do you remember ever falling or anything and hurting your right hip and your right ankle? He said, yes, I fell off my bicycle on my right side. And that's where it hurt. And then, so I worked there, but then I realized when one part of the body is hurting and you're not able to fully use it to maintain your balance or whatever, it starts to affect another part that is being impacted by this imbalance. So there's a lot of little, I must call them fun little awarenesses that we get with this, because we don't know where it's going. I had no idea that when I went to work on the shoulder that it was going to do something else. And another one that I really, really have enjoyed thinking about is Amanda came to see me at one point about sinus congestion. And he said, as a child, he had to stay home from school often because he had all this pain in his sinuses. And he said, then it was something he was able to work it through, or he had medication. But he said now he had a small child who was now going to preschool, and he was coming home with sinus infections, and his dad was getting. So I worked with the sinuses, and then he started to feel it in his chest. So we worked with all of this. And then as we went along, there was something else came up around going off to do something in another country. But by this time, this has been cleared up. The last time I saw him, it was most incredible, because in the middle of the session, he started to giggle. And I don't think he was at all aware of it, but this is when we talk about emotional release. Mm-hmm. And I was working away, and he was giggling and giggling and giggling. I was probably giggling too, because it's very hard not to giggle when somebody else is. And then he stopped giggling, and I was finished with the session. And when he sort of came back to today's awareness, he said, I don't know when I have ever felt so relaxed. He said, I just feel better than I ever would after a night's sleep. Wow. And that is not an uncommon experience. They go into this place that is totally, very deep, and they don't really know what's happened, which is fine, but they know that something quite dramatic has taken place, and they feel so much better. And the other part I was thinking about too is about working with bones. I don't talk about it much because I don't heal bones or straighten bones, but we certainly are creating that space where they don't like being out of alignment, right? And so what I do is, if there's something with a joint or like a knee or hip, I just put my hands under their heels. I'll just put both heels like this, or one heel, and you'll actually feel the body, the leg, do this little wiggle. It's doing this little adjustment. It's minuscule, but usually it's what has happened. It's what's going on.
I notice that with knees. If I'm sending energy to someone's knee or a shoulder, you hold it and you almost feel it. It's like a slight shift. But then I find when you're working with a physical structure, the person's body needs to move to then bring it into alignment. So you'll be running the energy, say, into someone's shoulder, and then all of a sudden they'll have the impulse to move. Yeah. And then normally that's when that physical shift occurs as a result of the energy, which is really cool.
And sometimes they want to stretch. Like every now and then they'll say, I really feel like I need to stretch. And when they do that, it's almost as if their body is allowing itself to take up the space that it needs. Because it does. It needs to move where it needs to go to have that. And I make sure I let people know that I'm not doing this. I'm only holding the space. I don't know how the body is going to do it. The body has to do it in its own way, and I don't dictate. I could even do what they want and say, I'll work here. This is where you want me to work. But the energy will go where it needs. It doesn't listen to me. It does what it needs to do for itself. I've worked with people who have come to me with tumors, There was a season, and I find that often happens when there's a time when it's like everybody, maybe there were 6 young women at that, it was the fall, said they've been diagnosed with these breast tumors. So I don't know what will happen, but we'll just work. And every one of them, when they went back to see their oncologists, they were going for surgery or whatever, they said, oh, I don't know what's happened here, but there's either nothing there or almost nothing there.
Wow.
Yeah. And they shrunk. And one person, it shrunk, but it became 2, but 2 very tiny ones. And another person who was here at that time, she came back to see me a long time later. We talked about sometimes the gift of a diagnosis. Something is diagnosed and we feel terrible about it and we're very upset. But if we can step back from that and say, I wonder what this is about or why this is, and just allow this process to go on, it may totally change your life, basically. And it did, and she came back, she said, I can't tell you how much I appreciated what your work and actually this diagnosis has done in my life. She had worked very, very hard all of her life and didn't really ever give herself a chance to have rest. And her kids had to live with that. She said she left that job and many things had happened as a result of that. She said it was a gift. She said, if I hadn't come to see you, I wouldn't have realized that.
I think that's what I love about this work is it invites us to change our perspective of symptoms and pain. And we can now shift it and see that that's our body's way of communicating with us.
Yeah, our body is saying, tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, trying to get our attention. And then how Richard Gordon encourages us to celebrate that.
Yes.
And celebrate that we are now aware that our body is getting our attention for our own healing to show us where we can love ourselves more.
It is loving ourselves more. And this morning I was sending a message to someone. I've been doing I've been doing a lot of distant healing over the pandemic. I was sending a message and I said, I'm always reminded that this is the energy of love. What we are doing with this work is the energy of love. And we may need to say, as we're working, as I'm working with her, to just think about loving that part of your body that is annoying. Because I know for myself, I had this spinal curvature since I was a child. And as I spent time trying to accommodate that, I had all this, it became an S curve rather than just this. And I would be so angry with this stupid body that is hurting me, and nobody seems to know why. They say I'm making it up. Well, of course I'm not. And I did not like my body because it hurt. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that my body is not hurting me because it doesn't like me, my body is responding to something, and realizing what a beautiful body it is, I did high mountains in the end. Like I was climbing, ice walls and rock walls, and I thought, like, this is an amazing body. And I turned 50 living in Switzerland. I was out in the mountains on my 50th birthday. And I said, like, this is quite amazing that this body is actually able to do this in spite of all it has, maybe because of what it has lived with. Mm-hmm. And, I have 7 children, so I carried babies in this body, and they're all very healthy and strong. And so I think we need to really celebrate our bodies and how they can heal themselves. Mm-hmm. We need to be present to them. We need to love them absolutely outstandingly and realize that is what's required.
And I think in that way you can bring in the gratitude too, right? Like if you're not at a place where you can love your body, there's got to be something that you can be thankful for, right? You can be thankful that your hand helped you to get that glass of water to satisfy your thirst. Like there's got to be something you can start with. And I think gratitude is a great way.
I think gratitude, and they say the more we express gratitude, the more we have gratitude. We have things to be grateful for. Mm-hmm. So I think every day about where I live and the fact that I have a big back garden here, and I'm out there pulling weeds and I'm wanting to grow food, but I haven't managed to do that yet. But I have all these things that I really love. And another part of that, I grew up on a farm, not that far from where I am. And I realized that the work I did there and the closeness to nature and trusting nature there with my father, because my father had grown up on that farm, has helped me to really get this work. And the fact that now we're doing so much of it with distant healing. You know, for a long time, people would say, well, how can you possibly help me when you're sitting there and I'm, you know, on the other side of the ocean? And I said, well, it's about intention and energy. Like energy is everywhere. And so just because I'm sitting here, if I'm intending that this is for you, this is where it will be. And most people are fully into that. You know, they start to feel the heat or they start to feel something in their body moving. And I've worked with small children and they know, the mother says, as soon as I connect, she said, they know it. They start to smile and, you know, they get that I'm there. And I think that is such a gift for all of us.
Yeah, no, I find it's amazing. And it still blows my mind every time I do distant healing, because there's just part of me that wants to doubt it. And then as soon as you connect with that client and you feeling the energy running in you, and then you're hearing them explain what they're experiencing, and then that's what you're experiencing. And it's so real. I think it's one of those things you almost just need to feel it, because trying to explain it and describe it just doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, and explaining it and describing it doesn't convince them. So just let me do a couple of minutes. Just let me connect, and they will know it. Yeah, there's one person I worked with a lot, and she came and she brought her twin brother who had a disability to see me often. But there was another brother who doubted always a little bit, and he always doubted. I mean, this was for a number of years. And then all of a sudden one day he came and he said he was concerned about his hip joints. He said, I really, really don't ever want to have anything done with them medically, because I don't want that. So it took about 2 sessions for the hip joint discomfort to go away. But then he started to talk about other things that he was not telling me. I find people only will tell you what they really want you to know, right? What they're comfortable sharing. But as we spent time working together, he realized there was a lot more. And he started asking me to work on his eyes, because he was afraid he was going to not be able to continue to work. And he would always measure. And that I find is I like to measure on the scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling now and how are you feeling after? But he was actually standing in my door, and he found a place outside in the backyard where he could focus before the session and after the session and see how the difference was. And that was another quite incredible situation, because he kept realizing that it was getting better and better. And one person I've worked with a lot over time, and I met her when we were at a meditation group, and she had broken her wrist falling on the ice 6 months before, I should say. It was on like Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. And she was going to have a surgery. She hadn't had one yet, but she said she couldn't, she could only do so much with this arm. She had long hair, and she couldn't use this arm to put the hair up or open her car door. And so I was giving a talk to this meditation group, and I said, does anybody want to come and have a demo? And everybody's calling her because they knew what had happened. So she's sitting beside me on the floor, and I put her wrist like this, and then I put one hand on her wrist and the other one on her shoulder. And I realized none of my audience was looking at me. She could feel what was happening. So she came to the class 2 or 3 weekends later. And on the first day, talking about the emotion being stored in the injuries, right? So on the Saturday, there was a lot of emotional release as people were working with her. And she came into the class on Sunday dancing with this arm like this. I mean, it was amazing. The arm was fully functional. She says, she would never have believed it. And there it was. And another thing with emotional stuff, I mean, I don't talk about this usually because I don't claim to do that, because I'm not doing it. But I've taught some really big classes, And there's a lot of that. Maybe it's because there's many people in the class. Things will happen that nobody really understands. Of course, we don't. In one class, a woman on the Saturday, and I don't know what stage, I think she started crying. She was really, when she came into the class, she said, I don't know why I'm here. She said, I certainly didn't want to come, but I'm here for a reason. And that was like, she was not a very happy person. Mm-hmm. And then this happened in the afternoon. So I said, that room had a massage table. So I said, okay, I want you to get on the table and you just stay there for the rest of the day if that's where you want to be. And there was somebody in the class stayed near her. And baby even had some contact. And I explained a little bit about Peter Levine, and he talks about trauma. So I talked a little bit about trauma gets stored in our bodies and it's available to be released at the right time. But we don't know anything about it. And our bodies may just need to shake or cry or scream or be angry or whatever it needs to do. So then the class was over and I went to see her and I said, you may not really feel like you want to be here again tomorrow because I have no idea what will happen tomorrow. But it's probably a really good idea because I think there's more to this process that you will experience tomorrow. So the next morning, she came in beaming. I will never forget her face. The day before she came in with this, I don't want to be here. And that day she was just glowing.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So it was a big class, so I had a long time to wait before it was her turn to share. But she said, I really don't know what happened or why. And she said, last night, she said, my husband had to carry me upstairs. My body just wouldn't function. But she said, this morning, I feel better than I have felt maybe ever. Mm-hmm. And so it had all released. And I think the beautiful part of that is that it just does its own thing in its own time. I spent many years in talk therapy. Mm-hmm. And I realized that had its place, that I needed to do that. But you're sort of redoing it. You're sort of re-traumatizing yourself each time you go through the stories. And when we do this kind of work, it takes place at a level we don't need to be into. The body does what it needs to do. And then we come out the other side saying, whatever that was very cool.
Yeah, no, it happens on all levels, right? It's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and it's just trusting our body's intelligence, right? Our body knows how to do it. We just need to share that love, share the energy, and just honor our body and how it needs to release.
Yes, and it's so, I say, stunningly beautiful. I mean, it is absolutely something it's hard to explain, but it's all about trusting. And so if we could actually allow ourselves to trust where we are, and the more we can trust us and our clients, the more it deepens. Like I keep saying, I'm at this age and I've been doing this work for 20 years and I'm still in awe. You've probably seen me writing about things. I can't get over this. This is, and I mean, I have worked in many different, I worked as an auditor and I did not dislike that. I enjoyed that. But it was repeating, you're doing the same process. We're doing the same sort of touching people or doing it with distant healing, but I don't know what will happen. There's always this awesomeness about it.
I think it's really important that you express that you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that helps you detach from the outcome because you might think this is the good way for it to heal, but it's going to heal so much better or in a more appropriate way for the client who knows how it's going to unfold for them.
One client I remember a number of years ago, I worked with she and her husband, and she was having a lot of other work done. So she decided she was going to show me her interpretation of how this work works. So she was sort of drawing on the wall with her fingers. She said, when other places I've gone for therapy, they say, okay, this bone is here or whatever, and it needs to be there. So I'm going to make it go there. So the body has no say in what happens. They're going to make it or cut it and move it, like whatever that is. But she said, when you work with me, you don't tell it what to do. You're just holding the space And the body says, okay, before we can go there, can you see? We need to do this and this and this and this. I mean, she was doing this on the wall, and then it gets there. So she says it's dealing with all the issues involved in getting from here to there. And I mean, that is just such a cool way to express it, because I don't know, and I'm not trying to force the body. And sometimes I've worked with people who were also having a parallel series of sessions with someone who was doing this sort of thing. But I realized sometimes the body does not want to relax and let this happen. So I teach it, I guess, by just being present, to trust. But if every time I do a session about trust, and then they go somewhere where somebody says, no, you have to do this, it sort of goes into I'll call it a freeze mode. It says like, gosh, I trusted that, but I can't trust this. And so it really interferes with what's happening. So I've started asking people when they come to see me or when I'm working with doing distant healing, and I share that with them, because not that I want to be the only person working with them, but I need to know that if I'm working with them and things are not happening, that may be why.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like the body says, I couldn't trust this. I trusted her, but I can't trust this. So it's always important to be upfront about how things may unfold. Another thing, I like people. I like to talk to people. I like to listen. And I do all the time. And I've worked with people who they love to come to see me. And I don't know always how much results we're getting with energy work. I mean, that's happening. But I realized one day that some people like to come to see me because I'm present. I'm always present to them. And that's part of who I am. I need to be present to anybody I'm working with, whether I'm talking to them or, and some people have trouble with articulation. I try to find a way for them to explain to me what it is, or draw a picture or whatever it is, because I want to know, I want that input from them. And children are another place where I've worked with kids, and they tell me what's happening, and I do what I do. And it's incredible when they say, well, there's one little girl, she said, Mommy, did she do anything? She twisted her ankle playing soccer a couple of days before, and she couldn't run, couldn't walk. And I mean, I didn't do a lot. I just held her ankle, and then I held her heel and her knee, and then she got up, and after like 10, 15 minutes, and it was done.
I think that speaks to just how natural the quantum touch process is.
It is. It's just very human based. I mean, we are living in these physical bodies, and we just need someone to allow us really to be well. And that's it.
I mean, exactly what you said about that little girl. I think as a mother, you naturally do that to your children.
Yes.
I think that's why this felt very natural to me, because I first learned it when my second child was 8 months old. But learning the techniques, it's almost like putting a protocol to it to like amplify it. And then you feel it so much stronger.
And when we put the protocol to it, in some ways it's helping us to be able to describe it in a way that gives it more legitimacy. There's someone in the city here, when he came to ask me if he could take the class, he said he works with kids all the time. And he said, I know if they hurt themselves, I want to put my hands on their knees or their ankles. But he said, I'm afraid to do that almost because I'm not certified to do anything like this. So he took the class. And of course, then when kids got hurt in his class, it was, a piece of cake. I worked one day, a woman asked me to work with a friend of hers who had a very serious fall from a roof. He was a contractor, and he fell all the way down and landed on his feet. So of course, he's really damaged his legs, his hips, his thighs, his ankles, and he couldn't even put his boots on. Like, there was so much swelling in both ankles that the boots wouldn't go on. So he brought his son with him, actually, because his son also had some injuries. So she was going to work on his son, and I was working on him. And the biggest pain after that were his knees. And so I would work on the knees, but it didn't seem to change. And I thought that was very interesting. So the other thing I do often is, I will work at the two joints. So I held the ankle and the hip. And as soon as I don't know why it wouldn't, the knee didn't seem to respond. But when I held the ankle and the hip, it did. And you see the leg would jump. And I don't know how many times, maybe I worked with him maybe 4 sessions. But after that first session, he would home and he could put his boots on, but he could only put them on and leave them on for a short time. Each time the boots were able to be on for longer, and he was more comfortable being out in his boots, in his work boots. That was another very amazing thing, that this just helped to release all that tension, because often the swelling or the pain comes from the body's protecting itself and trying to heal itself. And so it's swollen. And the swelling is not going to go away unless the body says, it's okay, I don't need this because it's fine. But when we can actually work on either sides of that injury, it's pretty neat to observe. And the other thing I realized is that sometimes people come to see us and there's a huge, something enormous going on, that she had cancer. She had liver cancer. She was supposed to go to the hospital or the doctor the next day. And she's, I can't just walk away from my life at this moment. But she came to see me. And I still work with her actually from time to time. It was incredible how the body, as I was working with her that first day, like my table was drenched. The sheets were drenched. There was whatever was happening in her body. The healing was taking place. There was just so much heat. But each time I would see her, there would be the same situation. Then eventually, like she went back to the doctor and he said, no, you don't have cancer. As soon as he saw her, he knew that. But the body was letting go of all this fear, pain, whatever was going on. And in many ways, I'm glad I don't have any background I have no background in medicine other than my own experience of having a lot of things happen to me. Like I could never say for sure that this was what it was because I have no idea. So just holding space and being present. And I said, yeah, I don't know. And there was a time when I realized I could say that and feel just fine. You know, I had come to that point. They say, how long will it take? What are you going to do? But I said, I have no idea. I do what I do. My job is to hold the space and allow. And I love that, what I could say. I hold the space and allow the body to do its thing. And the other thing with that is that people are not ready to hear that. They don't come back. And that's fine, because obviously they're not the person who's best for me to work with.
Well, I think it's also fair because you don't know when the shift is going to really take place. I had this one client where her hips were very uneven and she wanted to level them out. And she was very skeptical. So I did the hour session with her and she responds with, well, I didn't feel anything, that didn't work. And I was like, okay, well, sometimes it takes time for our bodies to absorb the energy and shift as they need to. So just be present with yourself for the next couple of days and let me know how you're feeling. And then she said a couple hours later, she was laying down, she had a nap, and she kind of got up and she just noticed her hips. All the shifting happened. She felt very uneasy. And she said it was very painful in that moment. But then by the time she stood up, her hips were level and the pain had disappeared.
And some people, it's going to take a lot longer for them to allow that. I remember I used to, before my classes, I would always do a Friday evening intro demo thing. And people could just come. I usually liked them to let me know they were coming, but there was no charge. And I would just talk about my work. And then I would do, Richard talks about, the occipital bone and the hips. Like that's mostly what I would do. But this man had a massive, like this shoulder must have been this much lower than the other one. And you can't almost imagine that being possible. It was as if he had carried a school bag on that shoulder for 50, 60 years. And so he's at the front of the room and I'm just working on his shoulders. I'd work on both shoulders and work on that one. Probably the other one. Because I usually work on both. It doesn't matter which one is really out of alignment, but they both have to sort of be worked. And over maybe 10, 15 minutes, this shoulder came up and he said, I feel so crooked. I said, yes, I expect you do. And he went back and sat down and I sort of watched him out of the corner of my eye for the entire rest of the evening. And little bit by little bit, the shoulder went back down. And, I didn't see him again. But it's interesting because the cellular memory, it's in that other place, right? So he would have to have a number of sessions, maybe 2, maybe 20, I don't know. But until his being realizes that this is what is perfect health, not this. It has to go through a process where he will recognize that's where his body wants to be, or his body needs to be. And in my own body, and I must share this, was in a car accident when I was 10. And the interesting thing is, when I started working with people who were my first clients for a couple of years, were people who've been in car accidents. And that's a very interesting area to work in, because we have no idea what's involved. I mean, maybe they were told they had this or that, but when a car accident affects all of you, we were broadsided by a highway bus who was speeding, like that's a biggie, right? And it was 4 months later when I started limping. So when I started having energy work done, like I would feel better, but it wasn't done, and it took about maybe 3 or 4 years before it was fully able to be, but this was after like 50 years, before it was fully able to be in alignment all the time. And I mean, I would go out and dig in my garden and it would hurt because I knew how to work with it. I just put my hands on both sides of my pelvis. It would shift. I could feel it shifting back where it belonged. But it took time, and a lot of other things went into the process, because there's all that stored memory of denying it, denying that it existed, and the idea of not, being angry with my body. And we have to go through all of this healing process to come out to the other side, I suppose I would call it.
Beautiful.
I love it. I can't imagine doing anything else. And I'm going to keep on doing this. Like I keep saying, I'll be doing this for another 40 years. And I probably will, because I have worked through all the stuff, and my body doesn't need a lot of other things. It needs to be in alignment, have energy running through it. And I choose my food based on that. And yeah, here I am.
So cool. So thank you for joining me, Aileen. And we'll kind of wrap this up. So many great stories. If people want to reach you, how can they reach out to you?
If they want to call me, they can call me on my landline or my cell phone. My landline is 613-228-2272. Okay. And my cell phone is 613-795-3751. They can send me an email, aileen@aileensoasis.com. There's an S in the middle of that. Yeah, if they go into the Quantum Touch website, they can find me. And the other place where of course, on Facebook, I have a blog site, and it's www.wellnessunlimited.ca. Okay. And that's where I go and I put all sorts of things that I'm thinking about.
Perfect. Cool. That sounds great.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I really, really value your input, but also your technological skills. I think that was incredible how you're going to work with this in all your beautiful ways.
Yeah, I hope to use it and expand it and just make it. I really just want to make it not feel like something else, right? Like I want to bring it into our daily life and make it feel more natural, because it's almost like it's an abstract concept and people don't understand it. But like you had mentioned earlier, Richard says a fish doesn't know what water is, yet it's surrounded by water. Yeah. And that's such a beautiful analogy for us. It's like, we don't know what energy is, but it's because we are energy.
We're in it.
Energy is
We're
all
in
around
this
us. Yeah.
Beautiful soup of amazing energy.
I really wanted to share that with people, of how it is everything, and it's so easy to use and to work with and just to experience and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Thea.
When I was reading your bio, you said that you were working with Ottawa Healing Circle. Do you still do that?
I do, except for the pandemic. I couldn't. But yeah, I started a healing circle here many, 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 many years ago. So I realized a lot of students had no place to practice. Like if they couldn't practice it at home with household partners, where would they practice? So I started having them come here where I do my work. At first it was every week. And now it's like twice a month. Well, it was at the end before we couldn't do it anymore. So when I could start going back to the community center, which is just the Carlton Heights Community Center, and I bring my tables. I have 2 tables, and some other people bring tables. We bring sheets and pillows and pillowcases, and we practice together. You know, I used to practice one person on the table and everybody working with them. That's a little bit skews the process a bit, because people will say, well, Aileen had their hands on there too, so they didn't do it. So I wanted everybody to be able to work with one person to realize the difference they made. Like, I'm trying to replicate working with clients. And that's my big thing with students, is to have a place where they can work with their partners, with their fellow students, but able to have a very realistic. So when they work with strangers, they know how to talk to them, how to deal with all of these things, what to look for. So as soon as I can, I will be doing it again. The last time I checked, the community center still wasn't, you know, they had opened up to some seniors programs, and the thing about this community center, it's little, it's an intimate environment. It's not like some of the vast community centers. So it's really nice to go there. And I bring the tables in and set them up, and everybody gets together and we have a little conversation about who everybody is. And I limit it to students. I'm just going to take this a little bit further, because I think at some point it may be important to open it up to the public once in a while. So maybe when I have the first one here again, or maybe not the first one, I'll see how I'll do that. The public, anybody wants to come and try it, they have to make an appointment. So we'll have to have a roster, who's going to be here to work and who's people at certain times. Anybody can come to try it. So it may be that people who hear this, if they would like to try it and they're anywhere in this area, they can come, make an appointment and come have a student work with them. Because I mean, I say there are no students. You know, the students have to go through a certain set of things to be certified, but the minute they come to the class, they're no longer students. Like, I find everybody, the first morning of the class, there's no more students.
Yeah, well, I would love to help you with that, or help collaborate or something, because I think that'd be really fun.
Well, if you want to think about it, just going to
send out some seeds.
So the idea is to just, say it's a possibility, right? So we see all these healing circles out there, all these groups of students working with everyone. So it could be, I mean, where have I taught? I've taught all over the place. So I would be willing to go to any of those places to start one of these again, because they're just incredible. And it enhances the confidence of the students enormously.
Well, and I like the idea that you would have the public come in as a client so that they can experience it. And I think that's also really important for the students or the practitioners to understand that they are now running the energy into somebody who doesn't understand it. And I think there's a lot of confidence that comes into that too.
And not only that, when somebody is new to this work, it's a very different feeling when you put your hands on their bodies. Because those of us who've been doing it a long time, I mean, even students, they've been doing it for a while, their bodies have cleared a lot of that stuff. If you start working with people who have no experience with this, it's very different. So we have to learn the protocol of talking to them about it, and even prepare them for it. Say, I don't know what your body has experienced. However, when I put my hands, even when you put your hands on their head, we have no idea what's going to happen. And just be prepared for that and say, I don't know what will happen. What your body is doing is perfect. It's not going to hurt you. It's never going to do any damage. It may not feel great, but it's doing what needs to be done for the healing to be there. So I have all these little things I tell my students.
Yeah, no, I think that would be great.
So we'll have to get together and get this going.
We will. Sure. Well, we move in 2 weeks. So
okay.
Everything's kind of starting to get packed up behind me. So give me a month and we can start putting some dates on a calendar. And
I will put my thinking cap on here and start making a little list of things that, the points that I would like us to think about before we as we're going there. And I will introduce you to the community center. It's a beautiful little one. Yeah, so exciting. So yeah, I look forward to putting on our monkey caps. And
yeah, I really want to get together. The title that's coming to mind is Gathering of Moms.
Gathering of Moms. Yes.
So create these groups where we can kind of come together and experience the energy and all the healing that comes with it, and just so that we can enjoy the journey of motherhood.
And the Gathering of Moms and the children, working with children. I've not worked a lot with children, but I have worked some, and they love it. Mm-hmm. They just love the feeling of the energy. Maybe they really just enjoy having the hands on them, that are just holding the space. Mm-hmm. But they love it. And there's, of course, no doubts, right? They say, oh, this is fun. Even if they don't really feel much happening, they say, this is fun. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other group, I really would like to create some intrigue around is working with animals. Mm-hmm. And that's not your thing, but there's people who would like to work with animals. And animals, again, don't doubt. Mm-hmm.
I've never done a session on an animal, but I've done many sessions with clients when their cat comes and sits on their lap.
Cat says, I
not 20 minutes, for like 2 minutes, and then they're gone, or the dog comes over, or the animals always come to the client during the session. So.
And I had my therapy dog. She was with me for a long, long time. And I mean, she always felt people were coming to see her. Mm. When the doorbell rang, who's at the door first? And I tried I didn't want her doing that because she was, I tried to distract her with a snack or something. And it didn't matter. She'd do that, and then she'd be at the door. And when the students would come for the healing circle, when I was doing it here, they would be sitting in chairs, and she would try to find a way to touch everyone. She was part husky, so she was not a little dog, but she would stretch her body out, so she was able to have some sort of contact with each person's feet.
That's so cool. Animals know.
So I really appreciate this. It's so much fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Aileen. And I'll definitely keep in touch because I will be in your area soon. And can't wait to see what happens.
Me too. Bye-bye.
Bye.